first of all, I love you guys so much. The two of you are just so special, and to me represent the hope of tomorrow. I think you embody it in every way, and I've been very fortunate in the last 5 years to really get a glimpse of the future through people and whatever the universe has dropped on me. And you guys are a part of that. So
thank you.
I am doing good. So Veronika and Adrian, I'll introduce everybody to your bios and all the information about you prior to the podcast. But the thing that, the reason I asked you both to do this is I was thinking about how to do the podcast, and most people said, don't interview other people, have other people interview you. And I thought, really? Okay. And then I thought, well, how would I do that? And I started to look at segments of my life and the connection I have with different people that tell a story that I tell in some way, a story about what I'm seeing or what's happening. And so the two of you came to mind immediately for several reasons. And so I thought it would be fun for you guys to interview me. And first of all, how old are you, Veronika?
I'm 24.
And
31.
Okay. So the two of you are a couple, right?
Yeah.
And are very unique in many ways, but you also represent sort of a future look at what the youth of today are about, and that there's this individual spirit. Not everybody is the same. There's sort of a little bit of what I experienced in the 70s, where there was this entrepreneurial, individual energy that was very exciting and creative. So I'm honored to have you here, and I'm ready for your questions.
Yay! Yeah,
We're
thank
honored
you
to
so
be here.
much. Yeah, for having us.
No.
Because you're such a legend, really, like a true inspiration in so many ways for myself. Also being a New Yorker and kind of having a similar background in certain ways. Like we both went to the same elementary school,
Yes,
which
we
is
did. That's
very
really creepy.
Yeah, very, very, very creepy. I mean, well, not creepy. I think
In a
it's
good way.
in the best way. Like that's
Small
really
world.
small world.
Right.
And
We grew up in the same neighborhood.
on the same block.
Yes.
Yeah.
So funny.
Which is really special. Yeah, so where should we start? I feel like there's so many. We brainstormed about like at least 100 questions.
Whatever.
But we'll start maybe we will do like a timeline kind of thing.
Oh yeah, I wanted to ask a question. If you could go anywhere in the world today or tomorrow and with no obligations, turn the phone off, no job, where would you go?
And why?
And why?
So I did a lot of traveling when I was your age, and I saw all the places I really wanted to see and the curiosity. And there are places that I would always go back to. I love India. I love Japan. I think the culture of those countries are still very true and very alive and not sort of dissipated by this global
By
sort
Western
of,
culture, yeah.
Or just how everything is melding together. But I think the exploration for me is not so much the country to go to, but there's something about the exploration of the mind that I'm more interested in. Like,
Cool.
what's the future? And it's really in artificial intelligence, in the mind, and what we're able to do on a whole higher level that involves the planet. So I think I love being in different places. I get energized by it. But I think there's, you're in the age where you have to feel all of that and have that in your memory bank. So I really was fortunate working for the airlines to go everywhere. But now it's sort of the future to me is the mind and intelligence. And so I'm fascinated by that. It's almost like going to Mars or to a planet you've never been before.
I mean, totally. I think that it's kind of wherever you go, in some ways, there you are, but your brain is really what can take you to a different place.
Yeah.
Because at any moment you can decide, like, I feel really good right now. If something bad happens, you could be like, well, I'm not going to let this affect me negatively. I can take it and make it in a positive way, and then it turns into something good.
Yeah.
And you don't have to sit there and, like, be, upset about it.
Yeah.
So I know that I have a question now. You just mentioned that you were working for the airline and you were traveling, and I remember you telling me before that you were kind of stuck here in New York with the fashion here, and you felt like it was kind of old, and I know you were at FIT, and you felt like you weren't learning, or you weren't feeling creative. But then you were saying when you were working for the airline that you were able to go to London and you were going every weekend and learning a lot about, or they were just innovative. They weren't like New York, that was kind of stuck in the past. What do you feel like was the most interesting thing about going to London? What creatively did you feel like you needed to bring back to New York to make New York what it is today, or what you brought to New York?
So what was happening at the time was, it wasn't just New York that was sort of stagnant, and London was the same, quite frankly, because we were coming out of the 50s and the early 60s, which was just like Mad Men. The culture where the man is the cool one and the woman's sort of so happy to get her butt patted and wearing corseted clothes and looking like the femme of femmes. And that was what was happening. And clothes were very restrictive. It was just you were held in place, right? And I was so out of sync with it, and I was fascinated with old movies, classic movies. So I would watch movies from the 30s and 40s and lose my mind over the clothes, the makeup, the hair, and I would spend hours doing the makeup and just do everything I could to get my hair that way. And my mother was a hairdresser when she was in her 20s, so she knew how to do Marcel waves and all of those things. And I beg her, Mom, I'll iron, I'll do everything, just
so
get
fun.
the hair together here. And then I would go to vintage stores, and nobody, you have to put this in perspective, during that Mad Men time, nobody was going to vintage stores.
They wouldn't be caught.
That was not what you did. That's what poor people would go, and nobody wanted to look poor then. And so I couldn't help it. I just wanted those bias cut dresses, and I wanted to slink around like all the women. And I was obsessed with Cary Grant. I just thought, oh my God, he's so funny, he's so good looking, all of that. So that was in my head. And I also was a painter, so I was always a mess. I always had paint all over me. So there were these two sides, and here I am at FIT, so out of sync with everybody. And when I graduated, the idea of traveling and seeing the world was just like you guys. You travel, look how it's changed you from when you left to who you are now. So I traveled everywhere. I was so lucky to be able to do it for practically nothing. And I did it every weekend, and I was in love with London immediately. And that one little store that I saw the first trip where there was this color blasting out of the front of the building and this sound of music that wasn't Motown. Motown was all I was listening to. It was this other sound and this energy that was happening in a very gray city. Totally blew my mind. I was so drawn to it, and I was meeting musicians and able to go to these private clubs that were just musicians, and so I was in the right place at the right time. And I would go every weekend and come back looking like whatever I bought, and then everybody was like, please bring us more. And I was shortening my skirts to mid-thigh. And at the time, never in the history of women wearing clothes in public did you see a woman showing her knees. You have to understand.
Yeah,
that
really...
was never in the history on the streets of New York or in public. So when I came back with my skirts hemmed up to the mid-thigh, I mean, people were yelling out horrible things to me and calling me a prostitute, and it was like, no, if you were in London, you wouldn't call me a prostitute. I was like, I know, and I know who I am. And I just really got so excited about it. And then my friends were like, you have got to bring that back. Please get more. So I would bring back piles of clothes that I'd buy at Antiquarius or at Biba or Bus Stop or any of these great shops. And then finally I thought, I have to open a store because this is crazy. I've entered like a whole other zone. And so that's how I ended up doing what I'm doing. And it's sort of like the universe takes you somewhere. So this trip that you guys took to these exotic, beautiful places, now you have imprinted in your head this memory, the memory of the two of you together sharing this, and it's changed your life. It has changed your life, and every time you have these experiences, they can take you down a completely different path than you originally thought you were on.
Yeah, totally. I think that being able to see different cultures, experience different things, opens you up to different ideas. Mm-hmm. And, you know, one thing that, because especially now, for me, growing up in the 21st century, I never even really felt like being a woman, like I always felt like I could express myself in whatever way I wanted to. I always knew there were certain things like women got paid less than men, or that, you know, I knew these things, but I never felt like it was gonna like hinder me in whatever endeavor I wanted to create for myself. But one thing I noticed traveling, you know, to Southeast Asia was there was some temples, like Buddhist temples, which I always thought Buddhism was really open and, you know, it's all about loving yourself, where I wasn't, being a woman, allowed to go in. And it kind of, like, part of me wanted to be like a rebel, and Adrian even said, was like, it would have been like really kind of amazing if you went in, but at the same time, I don't want to like disrespect their culture, but it did kind of raise awareness that we are living in a day and age that's, I mean, it's kind of great that we can do these things that, you know,
I
we weren't
totally
able to do
agree.
before in the
I
past.
totally agree. I think the ability now for women to do whatever we want is something that even in the 70s I really wasn't aware of, how controlled women were by the breadwinner. And now if you're winning the bread, who's going to tell you what to do and how to do it? So raising children takes a lot of work and a lot of responsibility, and sometimes that inhibits women from being the breadwinner. But now we're figuring out how to make that work, and it changes everything. But I think there's something about the way you guys see the world and the way my generation sees the world. And so some of the obvious questions I get asked now are about this gender fluid kind of thought process. And you guys are sort of the poster girl and boy for me. But, and again, it all evolved, right? It just sort of happened and evolved. And the story is that the two of you genuinely are this. I mean, it's not something you had to learn or you copied. It just is the way you want to be. You like to, Adrian loves to, dress up and
clothes or finding my own clothes at thrift stores that might not be in the men's section of the store. You know, when I go to a store, I'll probably go straight to the women's section because I know they're going to have the best clothes. Not because, maybe because nobody went there, or I don't know, I just feel like girls have the best design. So, you know, this like feminine side, I feel is always much brighter and has much more color and love around it. So I always sort of gravitate to that and I feel really comfortable there. So I think it's very natural.
And the same with you. I mean, you'll wear anything that is.
Yeah, I love to wear anything where I feel beautiful, and it doesn't matter if it's masculine or feminine. I don't mind. I like feeling in control of myself and the way that I am dressing. If somebody looks at me and thinks, "Oh, that's weird that you're dressing that way or thinking that way," I'm like, well, it's weird that you are not me. So why obviously you would not be thinking the same thing as me, you know?
Or that you don't have the spirit to have that expression. I remember a friend of mine in London reminded me of this recently when I was speaking at the V&A, and she said, remember when we would go to Paris and they would hiss at us and spit at us because of the way we were dressed? And I thought, oh my God, that's so funny. I totally, who cared, right? I totally forgot, because London was so on the other side of, this creative spirit and individual expression. And Paris is still very conservative today. Paris was so conservative that they would look at us like, lock them up, they're crazy, they're like totally nuts. And we were joyous, and joy is kind of the word I think about when I think of the two of you, that it's a joyous experience. Bad things are going to happen, but then you can have joy in the little things, right? In just what you put together, that joyous feeling when you do that, or trying something new that's joyous. And that spirit, I think, is so important in everybody's life. And part of it is the way we express ourselves and the way we dress or present whatever it is we want, or the statements we make. One of my favorite comments is, there are a few, like when they see pictures of the two of you.
No.
Who's the boy and who's the girl? And I'm like, yay, I'm so happy. It means it's right that you are even asking that question, that we're not throwing gender in your face, and that you're asking that is the coolest thing. How fabulous is that, right? And so I think, even to have that question shows that person's childhood life experience was so this, and now your generation, the generations to come, are not encumbered by any of that. None of that matters. To look feminine or to look masculine, first of all, it sounds so old-fashioned, but why would you want to be defined that way? We're all masculine, feminine, so we can.
We all have both. We both. I mean, I think that all humans, at the end of the day, are humans. You know what I mean? when we were seeing like these monkeys and these animals, like they're all the same at the end. You know what I mean? Like it's like whatever their sexual organ is doesn't even identify whether or not they identify with that at all. You know what I mean? Or if they want to be that in the future, or how they want to dress, or what they want. I think that gender at the end of the day is kind of, I don't think it's like the best way of identifying somebody.
No.
Ever.
No, it no longer.
No longer, yeah.
And it had a place when there were so many very hard lines, but right now to not have to think about that or worry about that is just so great and so freeing. The other question is, why didn't you ask her to shave her armpits? Like, why? What are you talking about? Why? That's like, it's just so. I remember when Madonna didn't shave her armpits, or whoever was like, everybody got all riled up. And I think, how can you get all riled up over that? Like that? I said, I love that that's what she wants to do. I love it. Why would I change anything about her? She's magic. What's going on in your head? So it shows you that this feeling and this what's happening, when it gets people to talk and gets people activated, it shows that there's a strong energy there. It shows that there's something that a statement's being made that's not sort of a demand, but an energy that's stronger than a belief system, that it has more of a potential for going on and evolving than when you have to be told that this is what you should do and this is how you should do it.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes, like, I've had agents before in the past that have been like, I know that this is who you are, like, but if there's a client that asks you to do this, like, do you feel comfortable? And I'm always like, yeah, I mean, sure, fine, whatever, you know, at the end of the day, like, it's their image. But I mean, for me personally, for my image, I don't ever even like, I always tell Adrian too, I'm like, you can leave hair on your face, like whatever makes you feel comfortable, you know what I mean? Or like, you can do whatever, and as long as you feel confident in yourself. Like if I didn't feel confident with having armpit hair or whatever, I would shave it. You know what I mean?
Well, and it looks beautiful on you, so why shave it?
Well, and yeah, he likes it, so I'm like, okay, if you like it too, then I'll definitely keep it.
So what do you think is the Adrian, this is a question for you, because first of all, I love the way he adores you. I mean, it's just the coolest. He's just.
It's really special.
Yeah,
I'm thankful.
so amazing. I know. She's great. So, so how do you define beauty? Like, what is beautiful to you?
Well, definitely confidence. If I see someone that's confident, they're beautiful because they feel comfortable in their own body, and that's super beautiful to me. And you can see that in a person with, you know, your eyes closed, or just see it when they walk past you, and maybe you didn't notice them because they weren't, you know, stunning in a way that like would call attention to you. But once you cross paths with them, you might feel something from them, which is that confidence exuding from them, which is beautiful.
Yep. And describe your mother.
My mother is beautiful in every way, and she's sexy.
And she worked really,
gorgeous,
really hard,
and
too.
She's a really hard worker, and she's a real role model, and I really look up to her. And the women that I see myself most attracted to are the ones that are confident, and, you know, the winners. Like, they're just so confident in every way, so they're able to be on top of their game and be much more than just a pretty face, or an interesting person, or, you know, the many different things that a lot of people look to when they want to find somebody to be with or to be friends with. it's just like a combination of being all of those things because you're confident with yourself, so you're able to be your best self. You're able to know what you like. You're not looking at what other people like. You know what makes you happy, and you know what you like. So you're able to really just be yourself, and that's who my mom is. She's just really herself. And as I see her growing older and really coming to terms with her life and being a provider and a mother to 3, I love her more and more every day, because I'm so happy to see that she grows sweeter and sweeter, and I never knew that she could always just be a better person every day. And
that's very nice. Good job, Mom.
Yeah.
Really. So, and what's your definition of beauty?
My definition of beauty is someone that's not afraid to be themselves. I mean, I think it's another form of confidence as well. I always admire somebody that's confident, but I think it's somebody that, it's like, this is who I am, this is like what I like, and then because especially with relationships, it's always like about like finding things where it's hard, a relationship. Where it's finding things like where it's like, okay, I like this and you like this, and then it's like a puzzle where it's like, okay, this might not fit here, but it's gonna fit over here. So and I think that Adrian and I work really well together because we help each other in that way. We're like, okay, we can get through this to go over to here. And it almost was such a physical thing on this last trip because we didn't plan anything. So it was like every day we were, like, okay, now we want to go over to to this cave. So we're going to, take the motorbike.
Plan our route.
Yeah, like take the dirt bike and like plan our route and make sure we get food on the way and maybe
There's
stop and
gas stations here and here.
Yeah.
We have to plan it out specifically because there's no ATM. Like the ATM and gas network across some of these countries.
They don't
really
exist.
yeah, they don't even have it.
No.
Yeah,
It's a
so
lot
we
of
had to
planning on the go.
Yeah.
Compromising.
Yeah, I mean, that's the best way to get to know someone. I used to go camping a lot in the 70s, and if you really want to know somebody and you go camping with them, like, you have to plan if you're going camping. You're not near food, you're not near drinking water, you may not see people for a while. You need to know you have everything if there's a storm, if whatever's happening. And so the person you're with, and immediately.
Oh,
if
and
they're gonna
no
hold
phones
up.
either,
Yeah,
too, in the 70s.
No, nothing, no cell phone.
Distractions or instant gratification.
No, but which wasn't bad, but it was definitely, survival has to do with how you get along together, and it's almost like farmers in the 1800s and 1700s. They weren't getting divorces. Those families were stuck together. They needed each other. They depended on each other. They strategized together. Their survival depended on their cohesive family unit. So all of that is seen when you're in these stressful situations where you don't know how you're going to come out the other end, but you better have some planning so that it's a good ending, not some crazy thing. There's a question I have. So when I talk about you guys or people from your generation, I think that the idea of millennials and the disruption of millennials really caused so much pain and heartache for so many people, because what the status quo worked so well, even though everybody knew it's not really working that well, and people were kind of doing the same thing over and over again, and it wasn't working. So then this disruption came, and change has to happen. You can't be comfortable where you are now. You're somewhere else. And then there's the tail end of millennials, and then Gen Z. So you guys are a hybrid of, you're really in the Gen Z age. You just make that borderline thing.
Yeah.
But you have a Gen Z personality too. So you're on that cusp of the next wave, and the lower end of millennial are more open, less kind of hard lines on things. So I also noticed that in this group, which is a little different from millennials, you guys have 2 or 3 careers or potential entrepreneurial businesses, or you're not doing one thing. You're doing many things. So tell me about that and what's in your head about that?
Well, personally, I feel like if I were to just stick my mind to one thing, I would be afraid that I would be losing out on the other things that I could be trying. I found that, like, as a kid, I was focusing a lot on doing ballet, and I felt like I was almost I still kept a lot of, like, my creativity, but I almost felt like doing ballet was not the kind of creativity I ever wanted. So now I feel like I'm, like, making up for it, and being around so many creative people and meeting so many inspirational people. I'm like, well, I can't just do one thing. Like, I need to be able to say that I tried it, and also I found that, like, as a kid, I was also really scared of rejection, and there were certain things in my life, like, where, like, I was dyslexic growing up, so there were certain things that I felt like I couldn't do, and then now, like, I'm like, wow, I can do everything I want, and it's like express this, like, confidence inside of myself. So now I'm like, I need to do everything I want, and I also don't want to feel like I can't be creative because I know that I have something to give.
Yeah. So I think, a really good lesson that I learned, and I'm a big believer in always having as many things as you're interested in work. Some of them will have more of your attention than others at different times, as you know. Yeah. But having that is very important. But the thing that I believe you have to really figure out early on is, what is your purpose? So, and how do you express that purpose in everything you do, so that these choices you make of the things you want to do are in keeping with the purpose. So my purpose was, I wanted to live a creative life. Done. That a creative life, top number 1 for me. Then in that creative life, I wanted to be able to help people and make them feel good. So I could do anything in that framework. So that was good. So all of the things I do really fit in that framework. And so I made decisions about my business and about the direction my company would go in. Do I want partners? Do I want to sell it? Will that possibly sacrifice a creative life? If it does, many times I didn't take an opportunity, and I starved for a while before I had my next, good thing happen. But understanding my purpose was very key, because then all of these other things that I've done throughout my career and my life always sort of fit into, I want a creative life. I want to have that option. So you're basically in some way saying something very similar.
Yeah, 100%. There's also, you were saying that one thing that you wanted to do is, like, help people, and I find that I also creatively want to do that in a way that's more of kind of not something that's not really talked about a lot, like with, like, with sexual things and talking about that. Like, I know there's a lot of people on Instagram that I follow that, you know, or talk about like certain, you know, things that like are not talked about, like getting your period, or, you know, or having sex, or what is sex really, or, you know, all these things like that, that I kind of would love to, since people, especially, I mean, I'm sure in your generation, really never talked about it. And I know, for example, like with my grandmother, like she didn't even tell my mom about periods or anything like that. And I think that that's something also that's really relevant in our generation, or even, and more so in Gen Z, that is, I think, kind of the future, because at the end of the day, we also are all animals as well. And I think that some people like get a little bit...
Yeah, I think the fear of knowing or what that experience is. So one of the things that I'm working on is I'm going to be interviewing 5 doctors who work on women's issues. And we're going to talk about what a woman experiences through hormonal changes from pre-puberty through post-menopause, and have an explanation of what goes on when you go into puberty. Nobody really, nobody talks about it. And more people are talking about menopause now, but nobody gives you any information. And so in my generation actually was very open in the 70s. Everybody talked about orgasms and how many you should have and how many can you have, and like everything. We would have mirrors looking at our clitoris and pass the mirror around. So we went off the deep end.
The 70s, I think. Well, I think my grandma was more of the 60s. So I think the 70s are definitely different. But then it kind of stopped.
It stopped, and I think AIDS was one of that scare things that stopped it, just like it stopped the gender fluid dressing and all of that. So this is a very conservative generation. Sex is almost...
Not
people
even
are too
talked
tired
about.
For sex almost. People are just talking about how tired they are rather than...
And depression.
And right. So if there's mental stress and physical stress, and your phone is occupying your time, you have no time to caress another human being or to even give someone a massage, never mind like have sex. Unless it's some porn sex thing that somebody has. It's either over in this weird section or almost non-existent.
There's no romance.
No romance. So how can sex exist without romance? It can be clinical, but without the romance, it's not going to last a long time. It's mechanical, so robots can do that.
Exactly.
So now so we talked about different things, how like having more than one thing going on. I know you obviously have more than one thing going on.
Oh yeah, I just want to experience as much as I can in this life. When I'm old, I want to be able to say that I really lived my life and that I lived a full life, and that I have so many memories that I can just close my eyes and think of everything that I've experienced. So
don't you think when you're that age, you'll still be having those experiences?
I'm not too sure. I don't know if when I'm older, maybe I will live vicariously through my family and try, but I may also just want to push my friends and my family to experience things. So I think as I get older, I start looking at telling like stories and trying to help people find it within themselves, to find that spirit to experience life and to travel. And I try to do as many things as I can so that I don't get bored as well. So I feel like if I focus on one thing, it just turns into a job. But if I have a couple more things going on, then I feel like I've got a lot going on, and I can get like a real fun mix going on. And
So what are some of the things you're doing just right now, like just some things that you do?
Right now,
Well, not this second, but in your regular kind of...
In my regular day, well, you know, we were just on a trip for 2 months, and I thought that we could stay active, scuba diving and doing a bunch of fun stuff. But then also at the same time, we have a project going on with a friend of ours who's a filmmaker. And so we've been documenting our whole trip, and so right now I'm working on.
Oh my God, I'm so excited!
Yeah, and it kind of reminds me of something that I know that we also have talked about before in the past that I want to ask you about, with kind of like it's like kind of like VR or AI, and I know that you've talked about before that you've been working with somebody. I don't know if you don't really want to talk about it too much because it's kind of still in the works, but this idea of the film that we have kind of is about this life that you're living. I mean, still alive, but where you kind of are able to have this virtual life that you're living. So it's not necessarily like you are making decisions, but it's not your
in a parallel.
It's not like your body is there. And it's like in a parallel universe.
Yeah. Well, there are some of those in existence now, and you know I can tell you about them. But I think thinking about that is very interesting, and connecting it to your trip is also has an amazing possibility for telling stories in a different way, experiencing your story and sharing that experience with other people, not just visually but physically, and all of that's possible in a parallel universe or in other ways through VR too. But so when you were here before, what kind of work you were doing? All kinds of things, right?
Yeah, but I did have like a 9-to-5 job.
Like what?
I was working in production, so I was doing all the things that go along with the production for a photo shoot, and call everybody and set everything up, get all the bills paid, get everybody organized, send out all the reminders, and set up the meetings, hire all the equipment, get everybody where they gotta be, and make sure everybody's having, you know,
Adrian's amazing with that. He also, like, when we play shows, my band and our band is actually, speaking of going back to that, is called Come Girl 8. And it's supposed to be playing off of like the name of like a screen name, but also like about like being like confident women that are able to talk about that. And I know that some people are not going to probably think that it's the best name, but it's also something that I think is revolutionary for this time. Exactly. Like, come on, get with the program here. Like, we're all dealing with this. And honestly,
there's nothing wrong with
I'm still thinking about what you were saying about, like, I wish that I knew that before. Like, I only recently, like, even learned about a vibrator within, like, because he bought me one. Like, I didn't even know about it.
No, see, your generation, it is such a conservative time right now.
It really is.
Baby boomers, I mean, don't forget, the 70s were
the best.
Nobody is going to die ever. There was, the stress level was, I can't even, I mean, New York was bankrupt, and people were getting robbed constantly. My apartment got broken into, this building 1 million times. But my stress level was just at such a different place. And the exploration of all of these taboos that had taken place through the 50s and 60s, which were very conservative times. The 50s and 60s, you know, the 50s and early 60s produced Marilyn Monroe. She was an expression of the repressed sexuality. So she's tintillating, right? She's like excites everybody, her body, her everything.
Her aura.
So where did that come from?
Her mystery.
Right?
Yeah,
So
her mystery.
So she was the antithesis of what the 50s and 60s were. And then when the 70s came, I mean, from girdles and corsets to nothing. I mean, no bras, no underwear. Nobody was going to have anything controlled.
Hair on the armpits.
Plenty of hairy armpits and hairy legs and whatever. And just letting your hair grow and never getting a haircut. Like a haircut. Why would you get a haircut? Men or women, why would you get a haircut? Not necessarily. And buying and wearing anything that you loved. And never looking like anybody else. And then the sexuality, all of a sudden there's Cosmo, which was so revolutionary. Helen Gurley Brown was putting these stories in the magazine that had everything to do with exploring your body, and all of these books were coming out that were about sexual feelings that you never really understood completely. And I can't tell you how many of these conversations and experimentation and porn becoming pop. I remember there was a porn star, Harry Reams, who was in Deep Throat. So have you heard of Deep Throat? So
Yeah.
Deep Throat.
It's like a play on the
It's a class.
Nixon.
No, but Deep Throat was a porn. This is before Nixon. Deep Throat was a porn film that was made, and this guy was enormous, and this girl had a deep throat.
Wow.
So this was
How
the
did they
point.
meet?
Well, but this was the story was some lame storyline, but the performance was like, what is that? So nobody, I mean, this is a time when women are just recognizing that they can have an orgasm. I mean, that was revolutionary in itself.
I think the premise was that her point was in her throat.
That's right.
Oh, yes!
Right.
I remember that.
Yeah.
So here, like, throat. I mean, we're just trying to figure out where the clitoris is, never mind throat. And so I had never seen a porn film.
Talk about misinformation.
Right.
As well.
Yeah.
So I had never seen a porn film. And the guy I was seeing at the time obviously had seen the porn films. And I remember we were camping one weekend, and we were in like nowhere, like by the river, the Delaware River, and it's all woods, and we go down in this truck to this area we're going to camp,
beautiful.
and it's quiet and beautiful, and the river is gorgeous, and we're making a fire. And it's sort of like around 6 o'clock, and all of a sudden this pickup truck comes down this, like, what are you doing here, into our space. And it's this guy, and there's a girl in the back wearing a white, sort of like the Gaultier bras that he made for Madonna.
Oh, yeah,
with
the pointy and the
but in white
tassels.
cotton,
Cute.
just plain white cotton.
Okay,
because
yeah.
that was bras you could wear in the 60s, you know, the Mad Men bras.
Yeah, yeah.
And big white panties. And she's sitting on a tire tube on the back of the pickup truck as it's coming down, and they get out and they start a fire like on the other end of the strip where we were. And I'm like, excuse me, like what? And so
Like,
the guy I'm with said to me, oh my God, do you know who that is? And I was like, no. And he said, that's Harry Reams. And I said, who's Harry Reams? And he said, Deep Throat. I was like, I still don't know what you're talking about. So now he's walking around in underwear.
Wow, at least he had some on.
But wait, yeah, and the two of them are like, and so I'm like, whoa, wait a minute, what's happening here?
Part 2.
So of course, the guy I'm with it starts, they're all talking to each other, and I'm like, I don't know. And then finally I said, I'm just feeling like I'm not in the know, and I'm not comfortable not being in the know. So we ended up leaving to the guy's dismay, right? And I was like, I'm not that adventurous. So I end up going to see Deep Throat. I'm like, holy crap, I can't believe it. Now, at the time, this was so radical, but not. I mean, it was like it never happened before, but everybody was going to see Deep Throat.
And where did you see it? On 40, like in
no, in a regular movie theater.
Cool.
Wow.
No, this was like, this is what you could do. It was like, this is new. Oh, you can go see a porn movie. And so all of this information for women was coming at us, one after the other. And I thought, I wish I would have looked a little bit more at his crotch. I'm not sure I got the message in here. I totally had no idea what that meant or what any of it was. But it was so new and open and free. And so women were very experimental, very open. Sexuality was personal. Mm-hmm. And there were women with women, men with men, women and men together, many women and many men together. And then it went to excess, of course. And then by the time AIDS came, it sort of shut that all down. Now, there was obviously going over the brink was possible, but the fact that there was conversation and experimentation and openness was really healthy, just the way it is with clothes, when you're open and talking about feelings and how you feel and what feels good to you, and what is sex about. Is it to procreate? Is it to relate to one another? And so my question is, at the time, making someone feel good was a pleasure, right?
Yeah.
To make someone feel good was a pleasure. I wonder if your generation and people you know in your, and I'm not saying your personal friends, but just have the inclination to take the time to step back to make someone feel good. If this is part of the dating process. Now, you two are in a relationship, and I know you want each other to feel good all the time about everything. So it's part of your being. But do you think it's expressed? Do you think Gen Z is thinking that way? Do you think millennials think that way? Do you think it's sort of a thing that's happening? What's your thought?
I feel a lot of the generation today maybe looks for taking care of themselves before they look at taking care of others or ensuring some sort of happiness or gratification in other people. I feel like many people are very just invested in their own self.
And invested
happiness.
in their phone, I think, too, because I think that especially right now, like, it's like so many people with like the Me Too movement and other things like that, they're just like so scared of letting themselves be open and wanting to give other people themselves or being okay with being so open that they're almost afraid to be like that. And it makes me kind of upset because at the same time, it's like, I understand obviously there's issues with that, and I totally feel for people that go through that. But at the same time, if you can connect with somebody and like find a way where it can work, then you shouldn't have to constantly be worrying about that or seeing or feeling these things on your phone or being so depressed all the time. I noticed so many people always talking about being depressed, and I think it has to do with not letting themselves go, letting them giving, because also giving somebody else pleasure is just as good as getting pleasure.
Yeah, and that's why maybe a lot of us in this generation don't experience much happiness because we aren't trying to make other people happy, and you can really experience true happiness when you help others experience it.
Or like giving compliments or telling, telling somebody like, I love the way you're dressed. I love how confident you look, or I love your makeup.
Or even like a simple hug. A simple hug exchange really just does so much to someone's spirit. It changes you. Like if you hug someone and shaking their hand or just waving at them
and laughing,
is huge. Yeah, see somebody on the street and they look like they're having a bad day, smile at them. And it might change their whole day.
Yeah. So when you talk about we're having this conversation about being generous to other people and giving them pleasure, or even just giving someone a facial or a hand massage. We talked about that. Yeah. But what about doing things for the community or giving back? Or what are your thoughts about that? Like what's happening in your world with how you deal with that? I think about the young kids in the high schools who were having all of these violent actions taking place, and how intelligently they're articulating the fears and the more kind of they're taking hold of their future and they're taking hold of their generation and speaking up for it. What are your thoughts about how to deal with the community or give back?
I feel like there's a bunch of different organizations that are, raising awareness. I have a friend who is also a musician. Her name is Julia Cumming, and she has this group called America Can Be Power. And she has like all of these, mainly women, come in and speak up about, like popular topics to see what they can do instead of what they can't do. Because a lot of people tend to feel hopeless, But there's several organizations, and I mean the world, like you said, like it's constantly, it progresses and it comes back in so many different ways that it's never. I mean, probably it will never be perfect, but there's certain things that you can do to help at least one person or a group of people. And recently we didn't even know about the amount of
unexploded ordinances.
Yeah, you can talk about this.
There was an amazing institution or foundation that we learned about in Laos, and they
Mining International Group. It's called.
Mine Advisory Group.
Oh, Advisory Group.
MAG, and they work with efforts to clear areas of the land that are otherwise not usable because there's unexploded bombs or bomb fragments, and those really affect a lot of communities in other countries that we may not really be affected by because we're so disconnected from them, and they just clear parcels and different like areas so that the communities can benefit by being able to use new farmlands and have
develop as a nation,
develop as a nation and just have like a better life overall for their families, and I think that just looking back on how to help or how to be more invested in the community, which is a global community, because we like to think of ourselves as one nation, one universe, one planet, It's not only like this is my street, or this is my state, or this is my government, this is my religion, this is my ideology, this is my country. It's also like we're one world, and all of everything is shared in this world, whether people want to keep it from one person or another. But if you want to have an impact, whether it's like a personal impact and you see somebody on the street that might need a hand, or it's a friend that might need somebody to talk to, or it's somebody in a distant country, if you can have some sort of impact on them, whether it's something that will change their life that day or in the future, as long as you can find it within you to give some time or some thought to someone else other than yourself, you're already making much more difference than if you don't give any attention to anyone outside of your immediate circle, which is just...
And raising awareness too, like in whatever way, shape, or form, like if it's on, social media, or if it's just telling somebody or talking about this MAG organization on this podcast, raising awareness to people that might not know about certain things. Or a few years ago, I started donating money every month to Planned Parenthood after Trump got elected, and just because I felt like I needed to do something to help, and personally, if I needed that kind of help, I would hope that somebody else was helping these kinds of organizations with, getting the morning after pill, or if they get sick, to get the necessary medication that they need if they don't have health insurance, because health insurance is to get any kind of medication is so expensive. So something like that, I think, is important, or at least to feel like you're doing something, because I think that it does feel like
I think finding out about what is needed and what you connect with. It's interesting. Planned Parenthood has taken so many, it's become relevant in so many different ways through the decades. And I remember in the 60s and 70s when the conversation about abortion started, it was obviously something you couldn't get. It was very hard to get. And many abortions were done illegally, and so that's I want to do a whole topic on this because of my personal experiences with abortion too. And but then we didn't have any sonogram pictures. And we didn't have any reference to what was happening in our bodies. And now, 2 weeks after conception, there's stuff happening. And the more sonograms I see, the more vivid this living human being is inside, and it's weeks old. And so my heart starts to think, oh my goodness, would I, even though I felt I needed for my survival to get an abortion, that I had to, would I have done it if I would have seen a sonogram? Would I have been able to emotionally gone through that? And so the big question is, yes, every woman should have the right to determine what is right for her body and her life. However, why do women have to go through that experience? Why do you have to make that choice? Isn't there something that can be done medically? Haven't we come far enough to be able to prevent it getting to that point? So if you get pregnant, the morning after pill should be leap years ahead right now, where you really can, before anything gets to the point where you have to make a decision about the rest of your life and the potential human spirit that's inside of you. Think about the enormity of that decision.
It's
beyond
It's a life changer,
It's
and
a life-
especially like being a woman too, where it's like it's so emotional, that whole process as well, like, and to bear a child, to give birth to a child. It's like I get emotional when I'm like about to get my period, let alone like when I'm like, if
so
I'm
you can imagine. And now everyone is having such a hard time to get pregnant, such a hard time. And there are statistics now for men, and the fertility in men has dropped tremendously. I think it's now, there are stats in the Western world that men's sperm count is dropping, and the potential for men to reproduce is threatened. And there's research being done because the chemicals alone in the air, the chemicals in our lives and what we eat and everything around us are affecting your generation in an incredible way. So being healthy and fit and doing everything right and super, super aware of what you're exposed to is critical for your reproductive health. So in my generation, everybody got pregnant by just looking at each other. And of course, everybody was experimenting sexually and not with condoms and not with any. So you could get pregnant by sneezing and you were pregnant. So the whole idea of that happening, not having a real sense, it's a tadpole. That's not a big deal. But the thought that women still have to be making this big, big decision about their bodies, their lives ahead, and what's going to happen to them. So my feeling is that the role of Planned Parenthood is greater and greater, not only in helping people procreate and have healthy children and bring awareness to why sperm counts are dropping and why all of this is happening, but also bringing forward the conversation that we need to have some research done on that pill, the morning after pill, being safe, being available, and so that if you know that having children is something you can't afford, you're not physically, emotionally ready to have, you're not having this incredibly difficult decision to make. And like I said, I don't know how I would have handled it. I just can't imagine, and it was so traumatic for me then. And it was done in an illegal situation, and it was devastating, and the details are gory. And but there was no question in my mind I was not going to have a kid. But had I had more information, I don't know. So everything is changing so quickly, but you're being exposed to a whole other set of toxicity in the environment, and your life and your lifespan. Everybody's looking now. It's like, is it going to get shorter? Is it because of all of this that there's a chance that a healthy life is going to be defined by less years? So for me, this healthy lifestyle conversation is a survival for your generation. Like, you don't have a choice. And now there's all this proof about alcohol being terrible for you. So why drink? Why drink? If you're driven for your career, driven for your goals, driven for everything, and you don't put yourself first, and you think about what you're putting into your bodies and how you're treating your bodies as the most important thing, then that's the decision you have to make. But the information is not out there. I mean, there's not enough, but there's more and more now just about alcohol, even red wine that was like, oh, this is good for you, the grapes, and you know what? Eat grapes and make sure there's no pesticides on them.
Chemicals,
chemicals. It's the pesticides that are the real kind of culprit when it comes to this sperm issue. And so I think besides that, in that sort of seriousness that your generation has to look at, I think that there are still hopes and dreams. And so what are the hopes and dreams for your generation? What do you think they are?
I think number one would be to see no plastic in the world and the oceans becoming healthy again and the environment just generally just somehow coming back to where it should be.
What do you do for sustainability? What are some of the practices you have in your house? Do you have plastic bags, plastic cups, plastic bottles in your house?
Well, we reuse. Well, right now we actually do have some plastic, but the thing is, this is a process, I think, to
if
just
it's reusable plastic, if it's
think
something
that's
you
okay.
can reuse, then obviously.
But yeah, we have bottles that we take around, fill up with water. We have like a Brita that we use to filter our water.
Yeah, we're cooking at home and shopping at farmers markets to cut down on our intake of delivery. We don't want to order any more food to the house.
We have reusable bags that we'll take to the supermarket. So there's and one thing, a huge thing, is cutting out plastic straws. We now, whenever somebody tries to give us a plastic straw, we tell them, like, no. And...
yeah, we'll give it back.
Yeah, we'll just give it back to them. We're like, you can give it to somebody else that I know will probably use it, but we don't want to use it.
Even this morning, we stopped for breakfast. They bagged a sandwich that we got. And I right at the counter, I just took our things out. I handed you your food. I got my food, and I gave the bag back to them.
Right.
And I saw them put it on the side, and they're going to use it for the next person. And that's just one bag less.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think you have to start setting rules. I mean, it's very easy to start in your house and say, I don't want to have no more plastic bottles. Have a Brita. Have glass wherever you can. And find things that can substitute for some of the habits that we've gotten into. We just had
waste, like so much waste all of the time, everywhere.
All the time.
Yeah, just buying less, consuming less. It's possible. We visited a lot of these countries that are living sustainably just because they only produce just enough.
Yes.
And it's like you can really live a lifestyle on that principle. Just consume only what you actually need. And you can have such an impact.
So in your, I totally agree, and I think we eat too much food, and if we eat better food, it's better. And so when it comes to clothes, everybody has too many clothes, right? Unless it's something that you're going to have forever, that you love so much that you'll have forever, or you then give it to somebody else because you had your fun with it, and now somebody else can use it. So if you both had to pick, if you could only have 3 pieces of clothing, that's it. And that would be what you would have to wear for as long as you knew the years ahead. That was it, those 3 pieces. Can you identify what those 3 pieces are?
Well, we kind of did that when we were in Laos.
So what were they?
Oh, okay. Well, I have these pants that my friend gave to me from Berlin that I'm really obsessed with because they have 1 million pockets on the side. So you can fit a bunch of things inside of them. And then
they're strong. They prevent you from getting rabies.
Yeah, I got bit by a monkey. Yeah.
Oh my God.
Oh my God. Yeah, and I know you when I told you about the pig. I can't even imagine you being there with me telling you. Oh my God. Well, that's for the next podcast.
Okay.
But
solid pair of pants.
Solid pair. Yeah. So I really like these pants. I'll bring them the next time.
I love pants with pockets when I travel.
I think that we should. I think that we should recreate these. These are some pretty amazing pants. Velcro. I know you love Velcro.
And what else?
And then probably like a top. I mean, I had this one top that I think is cute, or your top. I love this one. I brought this one with me. which is, I like the idea of it being like a bathing suit kind of, because if it gets, it's not where it's like, where it's warm, but then if it gets wet, then you're a comfortable, temperature.
Right.
And then probably just like a big jacket, so if I get cold, or like, or you know what, I didn't have, but I wish I did have, is a jean jacket. A jean jacket is always good because we're a raincoat.
Okay, and yours?
Shoes are really important to me. So just like one really good pair of shoes, because I know we can walk around barefoot.
But like which one?
Really
Which specifically one? Which pair of shoes would be?
I think
as you look at your combat boots.
these combat boots that I'm wearing right now, I wanted to take these with me on the trip, but I wasn't sure if it was going to be too hot. But now looking back on it, I think I would have been just fine with these.
They would have been.
It would have been probably good for the bugs too, honestly.
Definitely these combat boots. These are really special to me because I found them in an Army Navy surplus store, and they were on display. And I asked the guy,
and it was actually before the shoot. It was before our shoot.
Oh my goodness, yes.
I asked the shopkeeper, I said, do you have these shoes? And he was like, yeah, let me check the back. I was like, no, I want these. I was like, do you have the other one to this one? He was like, well, let me check. And he said, it's funny that you asked for these shoes because these are actually from the military. And they were used. So they're really, they're not new. Because, I don't want to break something. Right. I want something to be broken for me already. I like used clothes.
So what else?
These boots. I have 2 pairs. I have a bunch of jeans, but let's say that
you have 3 pieces.
Just pick one pair of jeans. I'd probably take the darkest ones, either black or dark blue.
And then what else?
Jeans, you can really wear them every day. And a jean jacket. It's really simple. I don't need a shirt.
My dad always wears a full Canadian tux too, so maybe that's what I'm into.
So I'm thinking about what fashion means and like where we are and going forward, and I think the idea of comfort and sort of safety in familiarity has a big place, whether it's comfort food or feeling good and safe in your boots and those jeans and those pieces that make you feel like safe and good, whether it's a jeans jacket or a trench or whatever. I think that type of dressing, that commodity thing is going to have a very strong base now. And then I think on the other end of the spectrum, it's like one-of-a-kind pieces.
Oh, yeah, I think so, too.
Right? Yeah. One of a kind.
That you just can't live
done.
without.
Yeah, like done. A piece that you see, that like somebody sees and they're like, you were made for that.
Yeah. And that you never throw it away. And so...
And you'll fix it when it breaks.
And repair it.
That's
and
how
repair
I feel about this fur jacket that I have.
So me too. Like I have, or if I have a pair of shoes I love, I will...
Oh, me too.
Rebuild them. You can ask Jennifer, rebuild them 100 times before I'm giving them up.
Me too.
So I think having something for a long time, and we're talking about sustainability in fashion now, right? So the sleeping bag coat is a perfect example. You can have that for a lifetime as long as you have a sponge and soapy water. You can clean it, put it away, and every winter you have the coat. So those jeans, the combat boots, your pant, the jacket, all of those things are forever. And then all of those one-of-a-kind special pieces that you wouldn't want to give away, that you want to keep forever. That, I think, is the essence of what a sustainable wardrobe is going forward. And I really think perfecting that every experience we have and adding all those one-of-a-kind pieces.
And adding your personality as you grow on top of it, too.
And then taking something that you loved at this point and you still appreciate and love and mixing it with some new. And I think the craft quality of one of a kind and taking down this mass fashion and whatever kind of thing we're calling fashion now, and just making it more and more that feels like a very healthy direction to go in for personal style and expressing yourself. So on this note,
Oh, I feel like I want to ask so many more questions.
We have many more we can do.
Okay,
so
yay.
On this note, the two of you are, I think, a great expression of joy and the future, and I'm so happy you're in my lives. I love you both very much.
We're so thankful that you're in our life.
And thank you so much for doing this with me. I really appreciate it.
We really appreciate you.
We are so
and we're
grateful.
So thankful to be here
Yeah,
with you today.
so grateful.
Thank you so much.